What's up, bosses? Welcome to About Her Business, the podcast where we leave all the gossip at the door and get straight down to business. I'm your host, Jonte, and today we have licensed marriage and family therapist, Miss Candace. She's not only a therapist, she's also the owner of Congruent Soul Therapy, and she's here today to offer us some healing insights on what she means business. So, ladies, grab your cups and your notepads, and let's get down to it. The meeting is now in session. Welcome, Miss Candace.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, welcome. And are you ready to get right into it?
I am. Let's do it.
Absolutely. So, you stepped away from a role that you previously loved. Can you talk a little bit about what that previous role was?
Absolutely. I was working in a group practice in Peachtree City, Georgia, and I was the clinical director. It was something I didn't know I wanted to do as a job, but when it was kind of an opportunity, an option for me, I did jump at it and I learned so many wonderful things. I also learned more about myself because I was working in private practice. I was working at a group practice that was actually nominated and won Best of Georgia 2 years in a row. So I was literally working at the best place I possibly could. And I was working with a lot of wonderful people. And being clinical director is on top of seeing clients one on one in couples, clinical directors navigating and being the voice for the clients within the practice, considering the ethics, creating forms, helping the therapist make sure that they're documenting ethically and legally to make sure that everything is moving smoothly so all clients can receive the best care. And it was a fantastic job. And there were parts of it that pulled me out of alignment that I wasn't expecting. So overall, I really loved my job as clinical director. And the more time I spent doing it and the more honest I was with myself, I learned there were a lot of things I liked doing. I liked teaching and helping newer therapists. I liked having a voice and considering clients, but I didn't necessarily like the amount of time that had to go into it or the mental load. I realized that I needed to take some steps back and make some more choices for myself, which is what led me to where I am now.
Thank you for sharing that with us. Now, I did mention that you did step away from that role. What was that moment that you realized this wasn't about something wrong, but moving towards something more aligned with you?
It was a slow process and then a process all at once because I think my body felt it, maybe my soul or spirit felt it before my mind could wrap,
Mm-hmm.
right? Before I had the words. And I don't even know if I can pinpoint it, but I realized like I wasn't sitting outside as much as I wanted to. I didn't have time to like chill out and do nothing. I wasn't unhappy, but I wasn't as happy as I wanted to be. I even got feedback from my boss, very good friend. Once I stepped down from the role, she's like, wow, your spark is back. Like, I can see this was a really good choice for you. So, at first, I felt a lot of shame about wanting to move away from something that was really good. It was a great opportunity being a clinical director, at my age, in the amount of time that I've put in. It was a great opportunity, and I felt nervous about saying no to that. And
Mm-hmm.
it's not necessarily something I was taught to do. It was like, say thank you for the thing that you got and be grateful for it. As soon as I started giving myself space to consider not doing that job, my gut aligned and everything felt yes. It was like a hell yes.
I love it. Nothing beats feeling free, especially as women. So I want to ask you, how did you give yourself that permission to want something different, even when things look good on paper, like at your previous job?
The first is giving myself space to dream, to daydream about what it could be like not doing the thing I'm doing and exploring what might I like to do. So I felt lucky in the fact that I really liked parts of that job. Where else could I do that? Can I do that in a different way, in a different title, in a different position? The biggest part was giving myself permission to be brave because there's going to be people out there that didn't agree with that decision or thought it would be silly or dumb. And I had to give myself permission to not care about that, which is
Mhm.
not easy, especially being a woman. Luckily, it is a field that is welcome to women. So I have a lot of wiggle room that other women don't have. But turning down a really good job is still scary.
Speaking of which, the 2 months after you left that job, You started Congruent Soul Therapy.
It was a lot of chaotic energy. When I stepped down from clinical director, my next goal wasn't to open a practice. It was to
Mhm.
maintain my role as therapist at my group practice. But life just kind of lines things up for you. And I said yes to the opportunity. So I stepped down at my role as clinical director with the hope of maintaining licensed therapist there. And I was looking into some other things I could do to really fill up my cup with the things that I was missing out of not being the clinical director, still teaching or things like that. One thing led to another, and all of that chaotic energy pointed me to opening my own practice. I didn't realize it only took me 2 months until I did my timeline rewrite in the new year. I wrote down what I did every month to really just look at it and observe, holy shit. It took me 2 months from stepping down, and I think part of that was a really giant life pivot. Aligned my soul in a way I didn't know it was going to, and every step after that was really important and pivotal. And then all of a sudden, I'm researching, literally Googling, how do you open a practice? Like, what do you do? I didn't know what I needed to do, but I trusted that I could figure it out. And I think that was the biggest jumping point of trusting myself to do what I needed to do.
And we want to talk a little bit about the name Congruent. It wasn't originally supported at first. What did it take to hold your ground? And why did you choose alignment over approval?
I think part of that is it lies in the definition of congruent soul, aligning your own thoughts and feelings and actions with your values. A past me would have people pleased my way through this and changed my name. Not to say that like everybody hated the name, but not a lot of people know what congruent means. And I got a lot of pushback of nobody's going to know what you're doing and nobody's going to know what this means. I had to take that information and sit with it. Like, is this important enough for me to change my course? Honestly, I decided that the universe would send the people that I needed to see to me.
Mhm.
I can't let what other people thought or didn't know about this name create a barrier to what I know I needed to do. Part of that was I came up with the name Congruent Soul a long time ago. I was writing in my journal. I didn't know what it was going to be for, but it felt important when I wrote it down. When I started dreaming of, well, what could I do outside of this role that I've been doing? And I was like, oh, I could open my own practice. And, the first thing is like, well, what would I name it? I'm like, oh, I already know. And that feeling of everything clicking in place was worth so much more than I could have ever imagined. And I have to protect that because that feeling for me is wealth, right? It makes me rich to be able to be confident and congruent in that, allow my thoughts, feelings, and actions to match up. And that can't be less important than what other people think of me because I don't have control over that. It was a lot of trusting the process, which is what people say in therapy all the time, but it's
Mhm.
really living in that process of what's important for me needs to be important for me.
I couldn't agree with that more. Standing on business. Now, not only do you stand on business when it came to the title of your business, you've also stood on business when it comes to several different areas. You worked with people in treatment centers, you work with neurodivergent adults, and in group practices. How did those experiences shape not just your clinical work, but how you are function now as a business owner?
It gave me insight into all of the ways there is to do business or practice therapy because there's really no right or wrong way to do it. However, working at an agency is very different than working in a group practice or even a solo practice. There's a lot of different considerations. I've had the opportunity to work with so many different kinds of populations. It helps me solidify knowing when I say I work with like overthinking people pleasers. I know that's true because I've loved every single person I've ever worked with. But
Mhm.
each person I work with gets me closer to that alignment of who I'm meant to work with. I loved working in drug and alcohol. I was doing 3 hour groups with a lot of men that may or may not wanted to actually attend. And then I worked with at-risk teens and neurodivergent adults, and that really did help me. I still see a lot of neurospicy adults, and it's not something I ever thought I wanted to do. but it is really rewarding and I relate being neurospicy myself. It was an eye opener personally as well as professionally to put me on a path of these are the people I connect with really well. So that's the personal and somewhat the professional of like the populations I'm working with, allowing me to see where do I do my best work? Where can I offer my best me? But also the background of the business of what considerations do I want to take? What did I really like from the businesses I've been a part of, and what didn't I like? How can I do it better? Not to say that others were doing it right or wrong, but to say what is right for me.
I love it. Now, I want to talk about because we all know therapy, but you're creating a program for people who may not be ready for traditional therapy. Why was it important for you to create a design for multiple entry points, such as a support? And how does that reflect your broader philosophy of care?
I love therapy. I'm biased. I think everybody should be in therapy. I'm in therapy, you know? And there are a lot of people that aren't ready for therapy for whatever reason. The one that stands out the most to me is there's still a giant stigma therapy. There's a lot of cultural biases. There's a lot of even gender biases around therapy. I mean, we could name all of them, but at the end of the day, there's still a stigma around getting help. Not everybody's ready to talk to a perfect stranger about their deepest, darkest secrets, and that's okay. I see people pleasers and overthinkers, so a lot of my clients are coming to me very much in their head, very analytical, intellectualizing. They want to understand the why behind things. And though I can absolutely do that in therapy, I want to be able to meet the people that aren't ready to talk about it yet and create a framework through a workbook or maybe a hybrid program where you learn the psychoeducation, you learn the foundation to understand yourself. And then maybe as you're ready, you want to move into processing, but basically giving some stepping stones without having to take too many steps out of your comfort zone. And I think it's important to have many entries because it's so needed. A lot of the things that I am teaching with psychoeducation is things that everybody needs to know. You need to know about how your thoughts work. You need to know about what your feelings are doing, how that affect your actions. None of us are taught that. I'm constantly learning about my own, and it's the job that I do. So having that easily accessible, whether that's free resources I create, the newsletters I send out, or maybe it's a cheaper option with group therapy or a workbook and a course. I want there to be access at every level based on your comfort zone, your financial level, all of those things. And there are plenty of people out there doing that. I'm sure of it. I think more people doing it will also change the structure of mental health healing as well as the stigma around it.
Hmm. Now, you did say that a lot of people are out there doing it. That could be very true in some cases, but there are ethical responsibilities that come along with claiming the title therapist.
Mhm.
So, how do you balance ethical responsibility with your creativity and innovation in the services that you now offer?
Absolutely. So to be a therapist, you have to have your education, you have to have your licensing, and every state has a different licensing board. I don't know very much about countries outside of the United States, but what I am aware of is every state has a licensing board that it has its own code of ethics.
Hmm.
So personally, I'm licensed in the state of Pennsylvania and Georgia, and they have different ethics that I have to consider. When you're licensed, you have to read up on it, you have to know what you're signing up for. I have telehealth permission for the state of Florida. So each state I am licensed in, I have different considerations for different clients because if somebody's in crisis, I would need to know how to best help them in their state and what are the rules and regulations with that. Therapist, I can only see people that are in those states. Now, there are things that I do that are non-clinical. Like I started doing a moon ritual group. Be very clear that this is not me. I am a therapist, but I'm not showing up as your therapist because there would be different ethical considerations. So there are non-clinical things that I can offer. When my workbook is finished, anybody could probably buy that it as a book, but it's not therapy unless you're in front of a therapist. So
Okay.
anybody that would want to process with me would have to be in a state that I'm licensed in. And I'm constantly looking into how can I reach more people? Can I get licensed or permissions in other states? You have to be mindful. If you are looking for a therapist, they need to be licensed in the state that you live in.
Mhm.
Also, even if you're on vacation, ethically, I can't see you if you are not vacationing in PA, Georgia, or Florida.
Okay.
And that's some of the ethical considerations. That's why we have to be really mindful about what we see on the internet because anybody can put anything out there. Do they have the education, the credentials, the licensing to back that up?
So you guys, you heard that it takes education, it takes licensing, it takes getting in with your state board and everything. It's a process to actually becoming a licensed counselor or therapist. Thank you again for sharing that with us and our audience. People did not know that you do have to have a license in order to practice as a therapist in this country. Now, I want to switch to the human aspect. You describe yourself as an overthinker and a recovering people pleaser. How have those specific traits shown up in your entrepreneurship journey? And how do you work with them rather than against those?
Ooh, yeah. Overthinking's always there. It's not going to go away because it's the way my brain works. I'm constantly taking it a step further than's probably necessary. And that's where anxiety pops up, and that's where confidence can decrease. So I'm very mindful of that. And I'm lucky because I'm constantly talking to everybody I work with about because all the overthinkers find me. But for anybody that doesn't know what I mean when I say overthinking, overthinking is when we aren't considering our feelings as much. So we're maybe not even identifying our feelings, and we might be impulsively acting or freezing in our actions. So then our thoughts run wild, like all or nothing thinking, like, well, if it can't be perfect, I can't do it. Or what will other people think about it? Or maybe other people won't like it, or maybe it won't work out, or maybe what if, what if, what if? And
Mhm,
those types of thoughts spiral, and it can, you might call it rumination or spiraling, whatever you want to call it, it's overthinking.
mhm,
So I know that about myself. I've been in therapy for a while. I talk about it in therapy regularly, and I have to know the difference of is this thought going to ease my anxiety or feed my anxiety?
absolutely.
And I also have to know how to regulate my system through that. I'm constantly doing the work. I'm taking deep breaths. I'm taking breaks. I'm moving my body. I'm doing the whole mind, body, spirit regulation. So, in the moments where I have to make a decision about my job, about my personal life, I can trust myself that I will know the difference between that feed and ease. And if it's feeding my anxiety, chances are I'm not regulated and it's time for a break. To talk to somebody I trust. And it's also time to trust myself. Being a people pleaser, that's very hard because I'm very accustomed to making sure everybody else is happy before I am. So just like picking my name and starting a business, like I'm sure other people didn't like that, and plenty of people were affected by that. By no means do I say don't consider other people. Absolutely consider other people in the context. You just also have to consider yourself. And that takes a lot of deep breaths.
I agree. And just again, we're working with a double threat here, ladies. Not only is she licensed and certified, she's also a lived experience. What better combination is that? So, I want to talk about practicing what you preach because I quite often think that this is something that should be practiced by anybody in any industry, whether if you're an entrepreneur, a director, or whatever. What does that look like in real life for you when it comes to something like fear, doubt, and old patterns?
Yeah, it looks like an opportunity every moment of my life
Mhm,
because I'm constantly teaching people to consider their thoughts, feelings, and actions. Those three things make up every moment of every life. And There's plenty of times I mess it up, but there's also hope that give it 3 seconds, I'll have another chance. But it looks like slowing down enough to really think about, am I acting on the way I really think or feel? Am I really in alignment with my true values? And it's hard because there's so many options out there that we're constantly making so many choices. But it looks like, for me, it looks like journaling a lot. It looks like going to therapy. It looks like brainstorming with people I trust to make sure not only professionally what I'm doing ethically, right, to meet the standards necessary to maintain my license, but also morally. Is the practice that I put out there, is the care that I give to other people truly what I think is the best that I can do? What is the best that is out there? But personally, I have to do that for myself. It can look as simple as not going out on Friday night because I know I need rest. It's those boundaries. It's saying no when I mean no instead of saying yes because I'm afraid you'll be mad at me if I don't do it. And that could be as simple as drinks Friday night to what I accept and allow in my business. It's the micro and the macro, it's the zooming in and the zooming out. And it takes a lot of honest conversation and dialogue with yourself.
Absolutely. Now, we all start the new year off with our resolutions, our affirmations. Your word for 2026, though, is the word community.
Mhm.
What gaps did you see in therapy or small spaces that made community feel like it was the right word for this next chapter?
I was really surprised to know that in my lived experience, right?
Mm-hmm.
But in my experience of being a therapist and now being a solo practitioner, business owner, there's not as much collaboration in that community as I was expecting because we're all therapists, we're all trying to help other people, we're all helpers.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of gaps in community and lifting each other up. Now, I'm not surprised by this part. Every single person I have reached out to and form a connection and community have been so willing and excited to connect and network and collaborate. I think the opportunity is there. We just need people to take the step. Some of that is, I think the older generations of therapy had a lot of, this is mind reading, I have absolutely no idea, but my guess is there's a lot of fear of competition. Well, if I work with Sally, is Sally going to get more clients than I am? And
All right.
I just don't take that approach. I take the approach of I want the clients that are a good fit for me to find me, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to take your business if I don't think I'm the best fit. So I want to have a net of other therapists and providers that I can really trust. So when someone comes to me, I'm like, ooh, I don't think I'm going to give you the best therapy, but I know my friend Jessica or Becca or Brooke or whoever,
Mm-hmm.
be able to share that with them so we can all be working together to be helpers in a bigger net, a bigger community, I think is really important. And women working together
Mm-hmm.
and respecting one another and lifting each other up, I think is really what's going to heal the world.
Absolutely. I agree with you. As a student, you can see that competition. And I think that it is quite important for us, especially in these times, to not compete against each other, but to come together and realize that we all serve the same community. And it's really more so about getting them the right help they need and making them whole again. Now, you did mention that you do help new clinicians.
Mhm.
What do you remember needing most, even back when you were a student like myself, in your early career?
My graduate program was wonderful. It set me up to be a very good therapist and a very good person.
Mhm.
And I feel like I didn't learn anything. I learned so much about actually like practicing therapy in a sense, but I don't think I really learned how to write notes or maintain
Mhm.
ethical standards. I had a lot of uncertainty in the beginning, and part of that was I was still working through people pleasing, that
Yeah,
that affects everything. But I remember going into my first job being like, am I writing these notes correctly? Am I going to mess something up? Like what's going
right.
to happen? So I've partnered with another marriage and family therapist out of Georgia, and our goal is to create a conference for Marriage and family therapists, we want to spread systemic thinking, systems lens, and general theory about marriage and family therapy. But we want that for any clinician. So whether you're a nursing PA, a LPC, a social worker, all of the kinds of providers, we want to share resources and extend the education that might not be happening in grad school of like, well, what can you do with your license? What can you do if you choose not to get licensed? Templates and understandings of the ethical considerations and the appropriate way to document. And there's no right way to do it, but there are considerations, right? If you are taking insurance, your considerations for documentation will be different if you don't take insurance. What does a diagnosis mean? Do you need to diagnose? When do you? When don't you? When is it helpful? When can it be hurtful? A lot of times we touch on those things in grad school, but to have a community where you can learn with other people that are at the same level, but learn from people that have already done it, I think is really important. So like the conference is a big skill thing, but my hope is to even start sharing my study guide for how I pass the exam because the MFT exam is hard. There
Oh, wow.
are a lot of horror stories and they are true, but just trying to brainstorm ways to help others, but continue to build that community in a different way because I want new therapists to feel like they are moving out of grad school into a warm hug, a community, a space where they can thrive instead of having to do the people pleasing of like, does my boss think I'm good enough? And it's like, no, we want you to know you're good enough.
Absolutely. And again, you mentioned that keyword that's quite often used, whether if it's in the therapy field or just entrepreneurship, and that's that word competitiveness. Even in health professions, how are you actively choosing collaboration instead? And what has that shift given back to you?
I am very lucky. Every person that I have reached out to or have reached out with me, it has been immediate collaboration. I think part of it is naming it. I want to collaborate with you. I want to help you. And what I've been really doing is offering anything I know how to do, I'm going to offer somebody else. So I met a new friend that wants to run group therapy and she has great ideas, but she's like, I don't know how to structure a group. I was like, I know how to structure a group. Let's set up a meeting. Tell me what you want to do, and I'll let you know what I know about that. And that's people helping people. And I think there's sometimes a fear of, well, if I help this person run a group, will people not come to my group? Or will they take my ideas or whatever? And it's like, have my ideas. I'm only one person. I can only run so many groups. But we need the groups. We need good therapists connecting with other good therapists so we can cast that net. So I have been lucky that I've not had very much competitive pushback. I think the competitiveness is just the lack of starting around.
Mhm.
But the more I look, the more I find. I joined a therapist support group and I found a consultation group that's really supportive. So it's there, but it does take some time to look for. My hope is eventually it will be blaring in everybody's faces, the community and collaboration, but it takes time and it takes people willing to put the work in to create the community because if you want a village, you have to be a village member.
And I can attest to that being a student, just joining national organizations, local organizations. It doesn't even necessarily have to be an organization that's a therapist. It could just be a nonprofit that has something in common with what your mission is. Those have proven to be very beneficial. And you don't see a lot of competitiveness in those areas because you're more prone to be focused on finding those solutions on those particular issues than actually worried about who has clients. Now we're getting to the end and we have a couple of more questions. So now we're going to shift gears just a little bit and we're going to talk about legacy. So looking back, what did security teach you about trust, both in yourself and in the process of building something that's aligned?
Coming from a job that was very secure, right? I had a salary. I knew that I was going to get the same amount of money every paycheck. It was very nice. But sometimes security isn't alignment because I, at some point, got complacent, even though I was unhappy. That security might have allowed me to protect myself from looking at my happiness because it was like, oh, this is what we all sign up to do. We all want to get a salary and have a good job. I think security, I mean, it's important. It's what keeps us secure, it's consistent. It also allowed me to know I could do it. If that's what I wanted to do, there are so many people out there that they're going to do that and they're going to love it. And not that I love not knowing how much money I'm going to make every month, but I love what I'm doing. So I think having a secure job is important depending on your values. And my hope is eventually my business will grow and become a security for me in my own way. I also need to be the one making those decisions for myself. And I was aligned with my old practices. I've not had a therapy job that I didn't absolutely love. Lucky. That's not everybody's story. But being the one calling the shots feels very important to me. And I had to give up the security in order to do that in hopes that eventually I will build that for myself and others. That comes from trusting all of the times I survived every experience I've ever been in. So I'm living proof to myself that I am my own security. And I don't know if we can truly get it from anything outside of ourselves. So it's kind of this big conundrum. But actual security, I don't know.
I love that alignment. It feels like freedom. It feels like going towards something that you love and will enjoy doing until the end. It feels right. And sometimes security in a job may not necessarily fit that. So thanks for sharing that with us. Now we're going to ask our final question, and I'll give you a few moments to think about it. When people think about you and your work, your building years from now, what do you hope they remember? Not just about Congruent Soul Therapy, but about how you showed up as a woman, a leader, and a fellow human that was finding her way.
I hope people remember and feel inspired by the fact that I did it messy. I didn't know what I was doing. I jumped and I trusted myself to figure it out. I think there have been a lot of things I haven't done in my life because I was afraid it wouldn't be perfect, or I was afraid I didn't know how to do it. This was not one of those times. I knew I didn't know what I was doing, but I was prepared to do it messy. I was prepared to start it and make it look nice later. And I think that that kind of momentum propels people forward in a way that they aren't expecting. And speaking from my own experience, I've only been open for a few months and I feel so good. I feel
Mhm.
in alignment. I'm still waiting on clients to build my caseload, but that's okay because I'm learning along the way. I'm learning how to build a business. I'm learning how to track expenses, things that I didn't know how to do. And it's messy. There are times where I send out a newsletter and it goes to everybody, it's in their spam folder, and I have to send out another email. There are times I misspell things on my website, and luckily I have people that care enough about me to say, hey, you might want to fix that. But I did it messy and I did it proudly, and I am happy to have a messy start with a very big hope that it will continue to be messy and grow and change. Growth isn't neat, it is messy, and I don't think it will ever be perfect, but I think it will be powerful. I hope that my business is an extension of what I hope to be: kind, respectful, doing the best I can within my circle of control. And for me, creating a business was an extension of that. It was something I could do in my circle of control to help myself, but also my community.
Absolutely. And that's a beautiful legacy to leave behind. Now we've run out of time today, ladies. But before we go, I do want to get all your social media information. Where can we sign up on Congruent Soul Therapy? What states do you practice in? Give us all the details.
Okay. So, if anybody is looking for individual therapy, couples therapy, or couples intensive, and you happen to live in Pennsylvania, Florida, or Georgia, then I am your girl. I am currently licensed in Pennsylvania and Georgia, and I have telehealth permission in Florida. I am a fully remote therapist at this time, hoping to start my group therapy sessions and my programs, which is somewhat of what we talked about. Of, if you're not quite ready for the full-on therapy experience, maybe you want a more structured therapy experience, and we can do a program where we focus on congruency. And then if you want to do more, great. If you're interested in maybe you don't live in those states, right? But you're still interested in connecting with me. I have my Congruent Soul Instagram. I also have my Candace LMFT, which is Licensed Marriage and Family Therapist, Instagram. And that's still therapy, but a little bit more me because it's not under my business. And if you go to congruentsoultherapy.com, you can learn about my clinical services as well as my non-clinical services. So I have a weekly newsletter that I'm actually rebranding to call it Somewhat Congruent. And I talk about my own reflections of being a human being, trying to navigate congruency on the day to day. This is what I do for my job, and I still have to look at my overthinking. I still have to consider myself other in context, just like everybody else. Have free
Absolutely.
resources, and I'm starting to do some non-clinical group work for community connection. So you can be anywhere
Mhm.
to join those things.
Thank you for sharing. Any last words before we leave today?
Thank you so much for doing this and being a part of my community and offering community to all the other women out there. It is so important to have people like you doing what you're doing. So thank you.
And with that, ladies, the meeting is now adjourned. Thanks to licensed marriage and family therapist Candace Kogenauer for coming on today and giving us all her valuable insights. Be sure to subscribe wherever you receive your podcast so you never miss an upload. Also, leave some comments down in the comment section to let us know which industry you think we should interview next. Until next time, keep those goals tight, those circles tighter, and those bank accounts growing.